Altered Physiology Mechanisms of Disease 1, Week 8, Episode 3 on Neurological Disorders. In this particular episode, we will talk about alterations in awareness as well as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. First, I will acknowledge selective attention. This is an ability to select from available competing environmental and internal stimuli. Individuals can exhibit sensory inattentiveness or selective attention deficits. With a deficit in selective attention, this can be mediated by the midbrain, thalamus, and parietal lobe structures. The individual cannot focus on selective stimuli and thus neglects those stimuli. We can also observe changes in memory. Amnesia would be one such example. In retrograde amnesia, some past memories are lost, whereas in anterograde amnesia, new memories cannot be formed. We can also have executive attention deficits, such as ADHD. For the remainder of this lecture, we will shift our attention to focus on dementia and Alzheimer's as they relate to changes in memory. Dementia is defined as the progressive failure of many cerebral functions, including the impairment of intellectual processes. Individuals with dementia will have changes and particular impairments in orientation, memory, language, judgment, and decision making. There are a number of mechanisms behind or underlying the progression of dementia. This can include the degeneration of one's neurons, the compression of brain tissue, atherosclerosis, and brain trauma. Individuals can also be genetically predisposed to the development of dementia. Next, we will consider Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a chronic, irreversible form of dementia that is related to altered production or failure to clear amyloid plaque from the brain, such that individuals with Alzheimer's tend to have plaque formation, the formation of neurofibrillary tangles, and the loss of basal forebrain cholinergic neurons. Alzheimer's disease can be either hereditary or non-hereditary. In cases where it is hereditary, it tends to occur earlier in one's life. It is an early onset form of Alzheimer's, versus non-hereditary tends to be more sporadic and has a later onset. There are multiple theories from more of a genetic standpoint, which I highlight on the screen here, including mutations for the encoding amyloid precursor proteins and alterations in apolipoprotein E. It can result in a number of clinical manifestations, including forgetfulness, emotional dysregulation, so being upset, for example, disorientation, confusion, a lack of concentration, and a decline, once again, in tasks such as problem solving and judgment. As I mentioned, there are a number of pathophysiological processes going on, including the altered production or failure to clear the amyloid plaque from the brain. So you have the formation of plaque as shown on the next slide. These amyloid plaques can form, as can these neurofibrillary tangles in the Alzheimer's affected brain. They are essentially buildups of protein that can also occur as part of the normal aging process, but in people with Alzheimer's type dementias, these amounts of proteins build up in a far greater concentration. These neurofibril tangles that we see are due to proteins that become abnormal but occur inside the neurons rather than outside. In people with Alzheimer's, you have the breakdown or disintegration of these tau proteins. Tau proteins occur in the normal healthy neuron and occur alongside the microtubules that you can see along the length of the axon. They help to hold them together. But in individuals with Alzheimer's, these tau proteins disintegrate into filaments that form these neurofibril tangles. The nerve endings at the very tip of the axon start to disintegrate because this lack of organization within the healthy neurons. So when these microtubules are no longer held together by the tau proteins, that is a case where these tangles form. And as a result, not only do the nerve endings at the very tip of the axon disintegrate, it leads to a disruption in communication between the neurons. And that concludes this episode.